This is 16 to 1, a podcast about education, teaching, and learning.
Hello.
Hi. What you sipping?
Not Coors Light.
I know, that's
Shocking.
It's really...
It's a wine night.
It's a wine night.
Well, Ohio has hit... I'm going to guess it's still fake fall.
False fall.
You know what I mean? Like, it was like 85 yesterday.
Is it second false fall?
It's like round 2 of false fall, I would say.
Okay.
And that means wine.
So you're feeling cozy and winey.
Yeah, and it also occurred to me today that there's only like a few weeks left before the end of the first 9 weeks. And, well, you know, I'm just a wee bit behind.
But you're just behind the whole being a teacher bit.
I'm just behind on my job.
You're just behind.
I'm behind on the thing I get paid for.
I see. That's a problem.
How are you?
I'm fine.
Are you behind on the thing you also get paid for?
No, I'm on schedule.
No
on
wine
that.
for you.
No, I'm still gonna have the wine.
Keep that part.
No, the only real news between this time and last time is that I'm apparently ancient and my body is very broken. I have some sort of back-related injury that makes me make terrible noises when I move because it hurts. It feels like I'm getting stabbed under my left shoulder blade.
Great chiropractor.
Yeah, I'm gonna probably need a referral. I'm not sure what's going on. I'm pretty sure.
I'll give you my guy's info.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's just part of becoming old.
I saw a meme the other day on Instagram that was like, the worst thing about adulthood is that one day you just get tired and then you're just tired forever.
You're just tired.
And I was like, oh, thank God it's not just me.
It's true.
I've always loved naps. Don't get me wrong, but wow.
You love them more than usual now?
I'm just tired, is the bottom line.
Yeah. All right. Well, what are we talking about this week?
You chose this topic, and I like it.
I did. Yes.
I'm kind of excited about it. And you did the research?
We've had this in the rotation for quite a while to talk about, but just haven't gotten around to it yet.
So we're talking about assistive technology in classrooms.
Yes.
And all of the things that can look like, which is a lot.
It can look like a lot of things.
Depending on how broad we go.
True.
Yeah.
What is assistive technology?
So, assistive technology. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Improvement Act, which is normally called IDEA, defines such a device as any item, piece of equipment, or product system that is used to increase, maintain, or improve the functional capabilities of a child, and specifically excludes a medical device that is surgically implanted or the replacement of such a device.
Yeah.
So assistive technology is anything, basically, that helps you learn that is not implanted into your body.
Yeah. So
right?
the one, so...
Was that a literal?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Cochlear implants was like an example of an implanted medical assistive device, but that's not typically considered an assistive technology for whatever reason.
It kind of is.
I mean, it does
okay,
definitely...
but not by definition. I'm with you.
It does.
Okay.
Those kinds of things
Sorry.
definitely do help students learn, but for whatever reason, I don't know why. I think it's just like... I think assistive technology is usually considered to be something that a school district could provide you with to help you learn. A school district can't really perform surgery on you and get you a cochlear implant.
Yeah, because also what came to my mind are those glasses that people who are colorblind wear. But I don't think a school could provide those either.
I'm not sure. That's a hard one. I think there's
because it's not implanted,
right?
But it's not.
Yeah,
I don't know.
think
Sorry,
probably...
I wasn't trying to just crap all over this definition, but that was something that came into my mind.
It's fine. There's probably a bit of a fuzzy border around some of these things, but I would say that for the most part, the examples of assistive technologies that I found, they're usually not medical devices. Although, again, some of them kind of
they serve medical.
They do serve medical needs sometimes, yes.
Okay,
yes.
We're already falling apart with this definition.
It's sort of like a propaganda. Last time we were like, is it?
Everything is.
Everything
I've been
is.
thinking about that
Nothing
since
is.
that episode. I've also gotten a few texts about that episode, and our friends generally agree that almost everything is.
I mean, right now it feels like we're in a hyper propagandized moment.
This is the Truman Show.
In American media.
We are living through the Truman Show. I'm going to take my boat out to the edge. No. You've seen that movie. I made you watch that movie.
Or we haven't watched it yet, no.
We watched The Truman Show with Jim Carrey.
No, we did not.
We 100% did. Because you even commented on how the product placement was so interesting and how he figures out that he's in his own show. Okay.
I don't know who you're imagining
I'm in my
having
own
watched
Truman
this
Show.
with, but it wasn't me.
I watched the Truman Show in my own Truman Show.
Yeah, apparently.
You also haven't seen Grease, so you don't get to have a say.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that one.
That's what we're doing tonight. We're going to drink wine, we're going to order Chinese, we're going to watch Grease.
Sounds great.
Okay, I'm happy
Okay.
now. All right, so do you want to start with
Back to
the
assistive
different
technology.
Yeah, sorry.
No,
Do you want
to
to start with the different like levels of technology required for these things?
Well, yeah, they just kind of get broken into these different tiers, and some of these things, the lower, so there's like low tech, mid tech, and high tech tiers of assistive technology. So when people think of the word technology, they're thinking of like gadgets and smartphones and computers, but there are very low tech assistive technology devices. So like technology is a very broad word. So anyway, the low tech, these are things that are really readily available and usually pretty inexpensive and typically don't require, batteries or electricity or whatever.
It's
so
just
we're talking
like a
about
functional
stuff like,
thing of some sort.
yeah, like a rubber pencil grip that makes, like tactile issues easier to navigate, page holders, modified scissors for kids with different grips, stuff like that.
Well, especially younger kids too, because those things all develop.
Yes,
So,
motor skills,
yeah, that's
fine
such a
motor
hard
skills,
thing.
things that assist with those kinds of things.
I mean, look at you. You're still developing them.
I mean, my fine motor skills never really developed very well, to be quite frank.
I'm sorry.
Mid-tech devices that are usually digital and might require batteries or another power source. So things like calculators, certain kinds of calculators, audiobooks, digital recorders, other kinds
It's
of
just
things
like a voice
that.
recorder, like just
audio
record your
recording.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, kids might want to record lectures to take notes from later or whatever. And then you have high-tech devices, so those are typically computer-based. They usually have sophisticated features and can be tailored to specific needs of an individual student. So, tablets, screen readers, voice recognition software, and we'll cover more of these a little more in depth. But yeah, so those are kind of three very broad categories. Yeah. So I don't know, what of these might make an appearance in your classroom?
Yeah,
Are you using any of these examples of assistive technology?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm definitely using some of these, like the motor skill things aren't really quite my age group, but I also don't have any students with those specific needs. Not to say that other high school teachers don't, but I personally do not.
I mean, we can even talk about things like, I know that you're a big fan of color coding to help students kind of link visual cues with...
Yeah, I do a lot of that. I also do, I do use audiobooks for almost all of my sources or all of my texts that we read. And then I make those accessible to the students so that they can access them if they need to. All of the videos that I show, especially like my TED Talks, I always have the option for students to read the transcript or to watch the video with the auto-generated subtitles. So like some of those things some of those things just happen and I don't even realize that that's necessarily, you know what I mean? But those things do happen.
There's just like baseline things that you can do that make learning more inclusive, even if you don't necessarily have, students with disabilities or special needs students or whatever it is. Because a lot of times we talk about assistive technology in the context of special education, but it doesn't really... I don't think it has to be pigeonholed into that realm because these things can just help level the playing field in your classroom.
I have had students in a wheelchair before. Currently this year we have a student who uses a walker. We have a student who uses an electric or motorized wheelchair. We also have a little person at my school. So we've been having to do a lot of types of things that we hadn't, always considered that would be considered assistive technology for these students just because the need hasn't always been there. Like some things that I use in my classroom, I always use. It's like audiobooks always happen. A couple of the websites we use do have an option that they can read to the students what the text says. I show a lot of TED Talks. They always have a transcript available as well as auto-generated captions. So there are a lot of things that just sort of happen, but then also schools and teachers find themselves in positions, depending on the needs of their particular students, that require... different assistive technologies, I suppose. So there is a baseline, I think, for every teacher as far as like what just happens anyways. But then on top of that, you might have, special circumstances that also require, something more specific, I guess is what I would say.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that with any assistive technology, because people tend to think of it as something extra or something that is a special accommodation. Again, that kind of thinking isn't necessarily helpful, but people do kind of tend to think about it that way. There can be and has been pushback about assistive technology because there are all kinds of myths around it in terms of, I mean, we'll go through some of these, but like, I mean, the first one off the top of my head that was very familiar was that the use of assistive technology creates an unfair advantage. Now, again, this is a kind of, this is a myth because really the supports that are offered by accommodations allow students with disabilities or just students who learn differently from their peers, you know. It allows every student to access what is essentially the same instructional opportunity, and it sort of levels the playing field. So you get people kind of in the mindset of like, oh, well, why does this student get to record what I'm saying when their peers aren't recording it because they'll be able to more easily go access it? And it's like, no, not really. What that recording is actually doing is allowing a student to be at the sort of same pace as their peers. So I think some of this requires a bit of a shift in thinking in terms of what these technologies do for these students.
One of the things that just popped in my head when you said that is I know of a story from a close friend, but basically that students in her class asked why this one particular student got to wear headphones during class, and it seemed like a time when you would not normally, and it was because they had a partial hearing loss, and so the teacher was actually wearing some sort of a mic that amplified it, and so kids would, and it's easy for kids to do that, to be fair, because they want equality. They want to, if somebody else gets to have their headphones on, they want to. So for them, they were like, well, why does so-and-so get to? And they don't realize
because
that
they look at it as an advantage where really it's about making sure that the student is starting from the same, we're all racing or starting at the same starting line. You all can hear me fine.
Right. He has a harder time or whatever the case. So there's definitely been some cases where I'm like, can you please just not, like and I don't want to make the student who does need that support uncomfortable either.
Another myth that students sometimes face is this myth that allowing students to use assistive technology can reduce motivation. I would guess that this probably is tied up in some of the higher tech assistive technology solutions that we're talking about. So like, if they can just do everything on a computer or a touch screen or an audio recorder, then they're not going to pay attention or whatever it is. And this is just really what actually causes students to lose motivation in class is struggling with a sort of failure, or at least a perceived failure in terms of keeping up with the learning, especially with their peers. So if a student is struggling in class and assistive technology helps them not either really fail or at least perceive themselves to be failing in relation to their peers, that's what increases motivation. So these kinds of needed supports with these assistive technologies, it makes students more likely to succeed, and success is what helps build confidence and motivation.
They're going to see a bigger change by getting the confidence built than to totally get that.
Another myth: students who use assistive technology can become too dependent on it. This is a weird one. So students with disabilities, they are dependent on teachers and parents and aides and even fellow students to help with academic tasks. Assistive technology can help these students do those tasks on their own. So it makes them less dependent on other people. It helps them keep up with learning. They can become more independent.
Yeah, I think that's really important.
Through the use of assistive technology. So people tend to think of it as like a crutch or something, but we really need to shift our thinking and recognize that assistive technology is not something that's just helping somebody get along. It's really empowering them to be the best student they can be.
Yeah, and have the independence to complete something, for sure.
And then there's this other myth. Students who use assistive technology have a more difficult time learning basic skills. And it's just not true. The use of assistive technology can help students more effectively access learning and have a greater chance to acquire these important kinds of skills. So just for an example, some educators believe that allowing students to listen to audiobooks or use text-to-speech software, that's what you were just talking about. Some teachers believe that using this to access digital print will prevent them from learning to read. Yeah,
I don't imagine.
Yeah. But however, listening to books can help a student become a better reader, especially if the student has the opportunity to read along in the text as it's being read.
Yeah, that's so important.
Yeah.
that's as important as modeling reading, literally.
For a whole bunch of reasons, it's wild to me that we just expect everyone to be able to read large blocks of text. I mean, students with dyslexia or dysgraphia, like we have all kinds of reasons why reading big blocks of text might not be the best way that students approach written language. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and reading and comprehending also are two very different things.
Yes.
If you're struggling to be a strong reader, your comprehension is probably lower than the level that you're reading at. You know, like, ooh, I'm getting worked up. That one I don't like.
You feeling it?
That one doesn't make me feel very good.
Well, I'm sure that you've encountered some of that pushback in your classroom.
Oh my goodness,
As somebody who makes great use of audiobooks.
I love audiobooks.
I'm sure you've heard many a complaint.
Yeah, I have. I really have. I think that there's like this weird correlation between that believing that your English teacher has to read aloud to you and like there's like, well, she's not teaching if she's not the one reading it. And it's like, what? What do you mean? Like, how am I not still,
well, I mean, there are a whole bunch of reasons for that, but if it were me, I'd be like, well, I might not be the one who could best and most clearly read this.
Right.
Like, maybe my delivery is distracting. So perhaps there's a professional audiobook recorder out there who could do a better job of this.
What I learned, and this is not exactly the same, but it's close, was that when I had students read aloud the parts to Caesar by Shakespeare, they were understanding it far less than when an audiobook was reading it to them. And it was because the anxiety of reading Shakespeare.
Yeah, it's hard.
Are you kidding me?
It's hard to read. So I think the anxiety of reading anything out loud in front of the class.
Students
what
are
you're
not
doing, you're focusing on saying the words correctly.
You're not focused on what you're actually supposed to be.
You're not focusing on comprehension. Yep.
Agreed.
So anyway, okay.
So, some other examples of what this technology can look like in a classroom.
Yeah, I wanted to dive a little deeper into some cool examples that are out there, and I knew about a lot of these but didn't know about every single one. But you want to just take the
I'll
first
start
one
with the top one.
Yeah.
So for students who are blind or visually impaired, and we have used this because we have Google Chromebooks, but there is an audio visual assistant that exists on those already. So the Chromebooks have a built-in screen reader, which is called Chromebox, and it can read out loud for users the content on whatever that Chrome browser is. Chromebooks also have features that make on-screen content easier to read, such as a magnifier, high contrast mode, and select to speak. And then teachers can also plug in or pair a Braille keyboard with Bluetooth if students need that kind of support. And popular cloud-based apps, such as like the G Suite for Education and Microsoft 365, also have dictation capabilities, allowing students to type by using their voice. And like I said, we do have Chromebooks. The other thing that I read about, and if I'm taking this away from a future one, let me know, but I read about a Braille printer that can print in 1 to 2 minutes.
Wow. That's
pages
cool.
of things that you would need. So if that is, you know what I mean, a specific need, then those exist as well, which I was just blown away by.
Yeah.
To think about what kind of a printer, like what the capabilities are to create something that has texture. You know what I mean? But Chromebooks are great for that. This is not a Google ad, but they are really good for that. And we have had students use constantly the screen magnifiers and also that screen reader. That's
Chromebooks are and things that are like it, things that are comparable to that.
Yeah,
they're good, cheap technology that school districts tend to buy. They'll buy them in bulk to supply students with mobile classrooms, basically classrooms they can take home with them, but it allows students to have technology in their homes when they might not otherwise be able to for whatever reason.
Okay.
And then next one example we got here is for students who are deaf or hard of hearing. This next one is what you were talking about before, I think, with the student FM systems. They're wireless devices that directly transmit sound to a hearing aid. So it's basically got a teacher with a mic on one end, and it transmits to students who have hearing loss, and it helps them better hear in noisy classrooms. And then also for the deaf or hard of hearing, we have video technology such as Flipgrid, has closed caption features.
I like Flipgrid.
Video conferencing tools, so Microsoft Teams actually comes with live captioning and subtitles. I had a note about machine learning in here. And this is exactly what you were talking about, the auto-generated, like auto captioning. This has really been a recent feature of the last couple of years, but almost every platform I can think of, and actually TikTok just integrated it a couple months ago.
Instagram and TikTok both do this.
Yeah. So we've got all these social platforms have integrated this technology, but it started off, I think the first really big example that I saw was YouTube auto captioning. But basically what it'll do is it uses speech recognition, either machine learning or some kind of software, and it'll just feed the live video, the audio that goes with it, through some sort of algorithm, and it spits out its best guess of the and it's not 100% perfect all the time.
No,
but
they're
it'll
not.
Spit out.
But they do a really nice job.
Yeah. It spits out the text so that you can see it.
I had gotten some pushback about this for a while because I think it was like Reels or Stories, whichever one. To use the Instagram app did not do it. You had to use another app that was integrated with Instagram to record on and then move it into the Instagram app.
I see.
And all these creators were like, how are you not doing this? I was also thinking of Twitter.
Twitter is a huge problem with this.
And they have the voice tweets or whatever they're called. It's like...
Yeah,
you know what I'm talking about?
Twitter released a feature a while back that allows people to basically make audio recordings of themselves talking and post them. And they weren't captioned. Or at least at first they weren't. Yeah. I don't know if they've added captioning or not. But at first it was just like... And Twitter already had the problem of being totally inaccessible because Twitter tended to, for whatever reason, big engagement would happen on the platform when people would post images of text or just images.
Yes.
And so like you take a screenshot of a note. This is a very popular celebrity apology thing. They'll write a thing in their notes app on their iPhone or whatever, and then they'll post a picture.
But it's not the actual text.
But you can't read that if you have visual impairments. And so it's kind of interesting because I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but generally on the web, there are a whole bunch of problems like this that have not been solved. But you might see, if you're on Twitter, people adding what they call alt text or captions to images that just translates what's on the image into text that can be read by someone with visual impairment.
Yeah. Well, Twitter also has I think it's a bot. It's like Unroll or something like that. And it puts them all in an order that can be easily read.
Yeah, that's another tool to help people understand and organize information better.
And the other one for Twitter that I was thinking of, and this is more just something that happened on my timeline, there are formats of tweets that occur over time, just like in public, whatever. And one of them was like a handshake emoji where it was like this thing, handshake, this thing. And it was like, it's supposed to like symbolize the meeting of these two very different things. But when we use characters like that or emojis and the formatting is off, the readers are not smart enough to convey it to you accurately.
Yeah,
so people who were using those things were like, what is this meme format or whatever? But the people who were using these were trying to understand memes basically, and they were like, it's not smart enough to read through it, to understand what it's saying.
So I would say that, and again, I do have a whole section on this later, but the web in general has a bunch of pitfalls for accessibility, and we have not come anywhere close to solving most of these major problems on the web. So they're ongoing, but I have been encouraged to see a lot of this live captioning of video, and like I said, it's making appearances on TikTok and Instagram and maybe Snapchat. I can't remember.
Well, and the most recent iPhone update can also help with this, because now the newest iPhone update, I think it was 15, you can now have a picture, hold down the screen, and it will copy and paste all the text that's found in a picture. So that you can move it to a place where, I don't know if you can read it from there or not. You may be able to. I haven't obviously tried that, but that technology regarding like pictures, like what you're talking about, is getting smarter. That iPhones can now copy and paste text from a photo that you've taken. So
just keep that in mind if you're posting anything on the web. If you turn it into a, apology.jpg, it's probably just better to have the live text there because it makes it more accessible to more people.
Yeah, and I get that, but Twitter's hard because it's so
that was actually part of the criticism of Twitter, is that people are writing these big long apologies on notes because there's a tiny little character limit on Twitter. So when they expanded
like kind of the point of Twitter, but
when they expanded their character limit a couple of years ago, that was actually part of the reason people were advocating for expanding the character limit.
It only went up by...
Yeah, it didn't really help this problem at all. No,
anyways.
But it is a problem.
Yeah, I'm going through it now.
Yep. Okay, you want to do the next one?
With my mouth full of wine, I sure do.
Great.
So, for students with speech disabilities, there is speech-to-text software and word prediction tools that can assist students with those disabilities to help them better communicate with teachers or peers or whoever. And so one example is that Office 365 has Dictate, which is an AI-enabled add-in that allows students to speak into a microphone and have their speech converted into text on the computer. I've seen this by a couple different programs.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of us are familiar with this
perfect,
kind of...
but they do okay.
Yeah. A lot of us are familiar with this kind of technology because we can dictate text to our phones and they'll try to best
like
guess translate them.
We see this sometimes in standardized tests as well. This is a function that some of them do have so that students can speak into them what their responses are. Still a good one. Not perfect, but very good.
For students with learning, cognitive, and developmental disabilities, we've got some people are creating VR experiences for students with autism, which I find really interesting as somebody who works in the VR space. There are tools such as memory aids, audiobooks, like we talked about, text-to-speech systems. Another particular tool from Microsoft is called Immersive Reader. It was specifically designed to support students with dyslexia and dysgraphia. With Immersive Reader, students can have text read out loud and broken into syllables, even in other languages, which is cool.
Really nice.
Microsoft also has a Tell Me feature that allows students to access commands on Office 365 applications without having to remember them, which... frankly, I could make use of, I think. There are also downloadable fonts such as Open Dyslexic, which can enhance readability and reading speed for students with dyslexia.
Or you use Comic Sans.
Yeah, we talked about that in our dyslexia episode, actually. Comic Sans is people everywhere make fun of Comic Sans for being used in situations where it doesn't necessarily make sense to use Comic Sans, but Comic Sans is a font that is easier for people with dyslexia
I have changed course on Comic Sans. I mean, my Comic Sans words.
There's still probably situations where it's better and worse to use it in terms of branding and advertising. But if it is something that's going to help students be able to read better, then yes, more power to Comic Sans.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, quite all right. And then there are just smart tools. This one was weird. Live Scribe Echo Smart Pen. It acts as an all-in-one microphone, speaker, and storage device. I was actually just looking at smart pens the other day because I got served an ad for it, probably because I was researching this stuff for
Is it the thing that when you write on something, it saves it somewhere online and then you can go back to your notes and find it?
Yep. So
cool.
it's that kind of stuff where you can take notes and have them accessed digitally later.
That's
and
cool.
then they have built-in audio recording sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking about how nice those would be if you could build it to fit maybe some sort of disability, like what we're talking about, you know? So like maybe that would be the easiest way for them to have access to all these things. That would be cool. I could see those becoming more popular for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I do that with my iPad, right? Like I use my Apple Pencil all the time and take notes or write on essays or whatever. That's good stuff. Mm-hmm. Cool. Yep. Okay, so for students with or who need mobility assistance. So one way that teachers can help optimize their classroom for all students is by using flexible furniture, which is a key component for a modern learning environment. This includes things like standing desks, wobble stools, and even exercise balls, and that allows students more freedom and comfort to move around in the classroom. And as I'm thinking about this, it sounds horrible to have all of my seniors on an exercise ball, but we could totally do it.
Yeah, you have to kind of, I mean, we talked about stuff like, I forget what episode it was, but you talked about those things that allow students, I think it was, we were talking about like hyperactivity or something.
It's something under the desk they kick.
Yeah, something under the desk that they can kick and not make noise, but that they can be busy in terms of like motor movement.
Standing desks, I'm all for. I agree. I have so many students who are like, can I just stand here?
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're making me kind of uncomfortable, but sure. But yeah, those things would be great. So another example is something like an interactive display or a touchscreen monitor if they aren't physically able to use a keyboard or computer and mouse. Or there are also devices called S&P or sip and puff devices, and they are a way for folks who are unable to use a manual device to access computers and other vital technology. So users can take a sip or blow a puff of air into a wand that resembles a straw to create air pressure. And then this air pressure sends a signal to the device and ignites a certain command, like a keyboard or a mouse, depending on the type of S&P and how they're calibrated. Yep. So a puff could allow them to navigate through elements on a web page, or a sip may open a link or activate a button.
Yeah, we've seen examples of this, you and I have, because we follow Able Gamers. We've been following different input methods that gaming technology companies are trying to develop to help differently abled gamers have access to. Because, you know, if you have mobility issues or you need mobility assistance or something like that, if you can't physically use a keyboard and mouse, then you're automatically very limited in what is available to you to do on a computer. But these kinds of tools, like the sip and puff tools, or other kinds
interesting.
Other kinds of game pads or keyboards or all kinds of stuff. People are trying to work on input devices that allow differently able people to play the same games or do the same technology experiences that everybody else does. So it's
really
interesting. Yeah. And then just the last note, this is what I was talking about earlier, but accessibility on the web. So my day job is in web development, generally speaking, and this is a big thing that's starting because governments are finally starting to become savvy to this kind of stuff. But there's a real problem in that most of the internet, it depends on kind of what metrics you use, but a lot of the internet is completely inaccessible to, is especially the blind. So people who use screen readers, which are technology that takes the code that runs web pages that we all know and visit and turns it into text for people with visual impairments or whatever. But this isn't just limited to vision issues. It's all kinds of, this applies universally, I guess I would say, but the web is not very accessible because of the problems. Some of the problems, like what we were discussing earlier, where you've got images all over the place. Image files typically are like image1.jpg or whatever, and they just get slapped in the internet that way. And alt text is more often than not provided. So every time you put an image on the web, consider whether or not there's an opportunity to put alt text with it. Because if you want somebody with a screen reader to be able to see that image, seeing that image for them means turning text into spoken word.
So that's like below maybe the purpose of posting the picture. Description of it.
A detailed description, not just some corny description, but like a detailed description of every image on the web makes the web more accessible to people with visual impairments, and it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So there are some reports up there that say that analyzing the top 1 million homepages on the web, for example, estimates that just 1% of them meet the most widely used accessibility standards.
Wow.
So you get things like unlabeled button, or like I said, image1.jpg or whatever. There's descriptive information that is needed for people with vision issues that just does not happen on the web. Now, there's a lot of work in this world. There are kind of web frameworks and web standards that are designed to make the web more accessible, but getting people to adopt it is very difficult. But there are lawsuits that are starting to happen to compel companies to make websites accessible. So it's although I don't think it should have to be on the burden of the person who is basically somebody who can't access a website. I don't think the burden should be on them to bring a suit forward.
Oh,
to
no,
make
I'm
these
sorry.
changes
That's not
happen.
what I was saying at all.
Yeah.
But rather just good for the push to
Yes.
become more inclusive.
Yep, for sure. So those are just some more examples. I mean, there are more that we're not covering, but yeah, go ahead.
Question. What Stephen Hawking used, would that be, remember that voice thing that he used?
That was like a text to audio. Yeah, I'm not exactly
Was that something
sure.
he typed?
I don't know.
I
if
know
that
he
was
had
a
partial use of
typing
his
thing or like a sip and puff thing or like a modified.
Okay. Maybe that's
I
what I'm
think at
thinking
some
of.
point he had like a modified joystick kind of input device, but
Gotcha.
I really don't know specifically what
No,
kind
he
of.
was just someone that came to mind, obviously, because I remember
Yes,
being
for sure.
just absolutely interested in the fact that he was writing and doing all of these things.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Stephen
Like,
Hawking, the one thing I do know about that whole situation is that at some point there was an opportunity to kind of update the software basically of his assistive technology and it would have changed the voice
and he didn't want to.
He didn't want to. He's like, no, this is my voice. But it was just, it's it's like a text to speech voice.
It's like a Siri.
But he's like, yeah, it's something like that. But for whatever reason, he was just like, yeah, no, this is for however many years.
Yeah.
This has been my voice.
If it works and that's your voice,
yeah.
why not?
Yeah. It's a really interesting concept
interesting.
because technology companies who are doing text to speech kind of stuff, I'm sure they make up. This actually came up on TikTok a couple of months ago because TikTok got sued for using a voice for text to speech audio
that they couldn't.
They used a voice that they didn't have the rights to use. So then they changed the text to speech voice.
Her voices.
It's really different.
Bad.
So that totally makes sense of why Stephen Hawking wouldn't have wanted to change his voice because it just sounds like a different.
It's so different.
Person, it's not a real
and
person.
their new
but-
one isn't as smooth.
No, the new one is.
It's not as smart.
It's more cheery and chipper, and it annoys me a lot.
Well, but I mean, that voice also does things differently with speech.
Yes.
So I totally get it.
Yep.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So the challenges.
Yes.
There's a lot.
Yeah. And this is kind of true of any sorts of accommodations that we might see, but especially in school systems, there are some challenges for using assistive technology. And basically, it starts with having the personnel who can accurately assess the need for assistive technology, who can watch for the effectiveness of assistive technology used by each student, and teachers, staff who can know what technology is even out there to meet student needs. So it's kind of hard to keep up on all of this stuff.
I just said it's overwhelming. That's how
it is. It really is. So you need to dedicate resources, human resources, to keeping up with advances in technology along these lines. And it's not an easy thing to do, but school districts do need to make sure they budget the man hours necessary for assessing needs and keeping up with technologies. And
just the budget alone.
Yes.
Like when I'm looking at standing desks and whatever, like
budgeting is definitely another challenge. Budgeting for the acquisition of assistive technology. Now, a lot of these are inexpensive solutions that could help a whole lot, but some of them are costly to school districts, but those can't be seen as extra discretionary.
I agree.
They are core to learning.
No money anyway.
Yeah, they're core to learning for a certain subset of students. So you can't treat it like, oh well, if we have the funds left over. It's like, no, if you can't meet this budget, then you can't.
Yeah,
you can't function as a school district. So then another challenge would be having expert users of assistive technology. This is a little easier with some of the lower tech devices that we discussed, but more difficult the higher tech things get. So like some of those mobility assistance things that we talked about, like I can't imagine trying to acquire an expert user of like a sip and puff device or something like that. That would be just very difficult. It'd be very difficult because that's a very specialized kind of technology, and there aren't going to be very many people available to do trainings on that or to help solve problems. Like what happens if something breaks? You got to keep all of that in mind. And then just collecting data on the use of assistive technology, knowing whether or not what you're offering to students is actually helping them, or if it's just, like, oh, let's just slap a Chromebook on this. Like, yeah, let's have one-to-one device to student, whatever. Does that actually help the students who need help? So there's a lot of data tracking involved in the efficient use of assistive technology.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Not an easy one to fix.
No, lots of challenges involved, but there are some really cool technologies out there, and there will continue to be, I think.
It's just going to keep getting better.
Yep.
It's kind of exciting.
Yeah, I think so.
Overwhelming, but exciting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wrap up thoughts? Anything else?
No, I'm going to be thinking about it.
Sure. Yeah.
And because more things are assistive technology than I had originally kind of considered. So it's fascinating. I think a lot of teachers are already kind of building it in without even, it's good stuff.
It is.
Okay. You want to do fill in the blank from last episode?
Oh, sure.
Would you like me to?
I don't know. Why don't you? Yeah.
So, Rosie the Riveter is one of the most famous pieces of World War II U.S. propaganda, and it features a woman flexing with the line, "We can do it," above her.
Sure does.
Yeah. Rosie was originally created by a Pittsburgh artist named J. Howard Miller in 1942. Most people associate Rosie with a famous painter who was known for his work as an American illustrator, who created his version of Rosie in 1943. So who was that famous American illustrator? It was, of course, Norman Rockwell, the greatest American illustrator of all time, probably.
Very popular one, for sure. Okay, and then this episode's question.
Yeah.
Anne Sullivan, known most famously as being Helen Keller's teacher, is a notable alumna of this school, located in Watertown, Massachusetts. This school was originally called the New England Asylum for the Blind. What is this famous school for the blind's name? And you said it was the oldest in the country,
It is
right?
yes.
Interesting.
And it's still in operation today.
Okay. All right. What'd you learn this week?
We have been watching for the past month The Good Wife, which has an incredible cast, but it's a lawyer show.
Yes.
And so we've just been deep in it anyways.
Lots of law.
Yes. So it's been causing all of these interesting conversations anyways. On top of that, on my commute, I have been listening to a podcast called The Dropout, which is about Elizabeth Holmes and the Theranos company that she was running that has gone under horribly. Just it's on fire basically at this point.
It's a company that got a lot of money on a fake premise.
Walgreens paid them like $140 million. I mean, like, just insane. So,
they were supposedly making a product, but the product did not actually exist, and they got a lot of money for it.
Yeah, the product was basically their hope was to prick your finger and with one tiny drop of blood tell you everything that's ever been wrong with you, everything that will be wrong with you, and scan you for something else. Right. You know, it didn't ever do any of that.
No.
And Elizabeth Holmes was the creator and one of the leaders of this company. And so this podcast, though, is all about how it fell apart, who the whistleblowers were, and now the court case because she's being sued into oblivion along with her ex-partner for their work. So I guess something I have maybe learned not only about her specific case and between that and the crossover of
I was surprised because you said you hadn't heard a whole lot about this case before, and for whatever reason it was like a big thing that I remember from a couple years ago.
I don't think I would have probably paid any attention to it.
Yeah, I mean it's very much like
it's like a Silicon Valley.
Yes, it's very much a tale of Silicon Valley being ridiculous.
And she had a really, really famous board of directors. And she also, I don't know if I'd call her a headhunter, but basically swiped a lot of Apple workers.
Yes, she poached employees from big time technology firms out there. Yeah.
What I want to say is the thing that I learned is that yesterday's episode that I was listening to was about how they chose the jury. And I texted Chelsea and I was like, is being able to choose all of your jurors truly reflective of the goal of a jury, basically? And so we had a conversation basically about like bias.
The goal being basically to have an impartial cross-section of humanity.
Right. And picking and choosing them prevents that in my head. But obviously for her and for the defense and, you know, in all of these cases too, like they have a goal, right, with who they choose to be on the jury. So it's been really interesting to be learning about that side of a criminal case in her case. And just also thinking about the times that I've been called for jury duty and just sort of like, what is the system doing? Is it effective? Is it useful? What are we accomplishing? You know what I mean? Like I'm just kind of going through it all. So it's been very eye-opening because the episode was just about the people that they chose for jurors. And they were like, well, we don't want very many women because women hate women. And we're trying to find people who haven't heard of the case, but they're all in that area because, you know, it's obviously the case is happening there. So it's just been very interesting to think about the parts of a court case that I never have to think about. So it's a great podcast. It's called The Dropout, like I said. Just really interesting stuff. And it is like her, Elizabeth Holmes' case is currently happening as we speak.
Yep.
And so they're guessing by like November, December, we'll know what will happen to her. And then after that will be her ex-partner, Sonny, is his case. So trial. It's been fun. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Probably gonna have dreams about courtrooms.
Probably.
For a while. Yeah.
Probably.
Okay, what about you?
Oh, I learned a real nerdy thing.
You did. I saw this and I laughed.
I've played video games since I was wee little.
Alas.
Back on the DOS box that I had growing up. So I've played video games for a long time, and there's this thing in the general video gaming world that you can do, which is install modifications or mods to your game after the fact that are usually developed by random fans out in the world. One of my most favorite ones that I heard of was that somebody took a game that involves, called Skyrim. It involves dragons and, you know, questing and swords and magic and all of that. They turned all of the dragons into Thomas the Tank Engines that would fall out of the sky at you. So it'd just be like a giant cartoon train would fall from the sky and you would fight it instead of a dragon in the game. So that kind of stuff can happen. But there are also really functional mods that will extend the storyline of a game or add, you know, 20 more hours of playable quests or whatever. So mods can do pretty much anything.
Or like The Sims, where you're not held to the squares of the layouts of homes, and then you can put your picture right where you want it.
You can have like 500 children or something.
Oh yeah,
change the limits of the game in some creative or interesting way that make you want to play it more after you've done all of the normal playing that you would otherwise do. I have never done any never have I installed mods into games before, just because when I was young, first of all, there were mods out there and there weren't good systems in place for screening out high quality ones from low quality ones. So you could just kind of screw up your entire game and installation and crash your computer and have viruses and all kinds of stuff with a bad mod. But there are now whole communities and systems in place and software packages that manage mods like this and screen out bad ones and all kinds of stuff. So I'm like, you know what? I really like video games, and it's kind of amazing that I've never used one of these mods before. So
Well, you're also like a purist.
I am kind of a purist about playing games. It is true. So for whatever reason, I decided there's a game I play called Valheim, and there's like a limit on the gameplay that I don't enjoy. And I was like, you know what? I am a purist, and I feel like it's kind of cheating, but I kind of just play this to have fun, and I would have more fun if I installed this mod. So I installed a mod.
You went through a lot to get to that point.
Yeah.
You like told me, and it was like you were confessing.
I felt bad about doing it.
It's okay.
Well, because you wanna be true to the artistic vision of the people who made the thing, right? But
yeah, but the particular thing that you're dealing with is just some stupid number that they've put on something that doesn't really matter.
There's a limit baked into the game that I just don't like, because I'm playing the game to be creative and have fun and not to be hardcore about
held
it.
to this one little thing.
So I'm just like, you know what? I'd have more fun if I did this thing. So that's what I learned.
There
how
are
to do
good
this
and
week.
okay ones, and there are good and not bad ones, I guess, too, probably.
Yeah.
The Thomas the Tank Engine one sounds good. That sounds very good.
It is.
As intended.
It is both hilarious and somehow horrifying to see giant Thomas the Tank Engines falling out of the sky.
That's scarier than dragons.
Well, here's the other
that
thing.
smile, no chance.
Here's the other thing, though. You can play Skyrim in VR. I don't know if you knew this.
And then is Thomas the Tank Engine falling at you?
Playing a game in VR.
I'd probably myself.
Yeah.
Oops.
Beep.
Whoops. You're all never gonna be able to guess what I just said.
Okay, any final thoughts?
No, but I did so well. That was my first beep of the whole episode.
It was your first beep. You saved it for the very end.
I did. It'll be an easy one too. Or you can just cut me all together.
I mean, it is scary.
And then everyone just wonders why I'm on the floor. All right, we'll go mod all of your games for Thomas the Tank Engine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else?
Is this over?
I think it's over.
Okay. It was a good one.
Yeah, it was a good one.
Well, let's try again in 2 weeks.
Okay, we'll try again.
We'll see you then.
Bye. Listeners, thanks for supporting 16 to 1.
We're trying to grow our audience, so please check us out at 16to1.com, all spelled out, and tell your friends about the show.
On our website, you can find links to follow us on social media, an archive of all our old episodes, and a contact form where you can get in touch.
Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you next show. Look at your little knees.